What's up, and welcome back to another episode of InSights, the podcast built to help you with your recruitment and digital marketing. I'm joined by Steve Gipson. Steve, how are we feeling this week, buddy?
I'm good, Brad. How about you?
Good. Back to work. Was at the Massachusetts Staffing Association's annual conference last week. Always a good time to get out there and see them.
Yeah.
So back in the swing of things. It takes a little bit, man. When you're out, I was only out for one day, but the catch up from a conference or just being out in general, even being just one day, it takes me like 2 days to get caught up at this point.
Dude, it's so hard. So
yeah,
think about it from a little bit too. So we work with a lot of small firms. And so we kind of mirror them in a lot of ways on the recruiter's website side. There's, I'm the only sales guy.
Yeah.
And so if I go to a conference and devote all my time to that conference, then somehow I have to find a way to be able to connect with other people outside of that conference and all the follow-up and all the things that has to happen and take place there. And recruiters deal with the same thing when they go to a conference to learn, which is great. But now all of a sudden, a lot of them being solo shops are behind the eight ball the entire next, 3-4 weeks. It's a big commitment. So that's cool. Do you like the small state ones? How do you like those? I do.
MSA, they're some of my favorite people. I've been speaking at MSA now for a few years. Fun fact, I did not back my car into a car this year. You don't know the story behind this one. So Buffalo to Boston is super easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an hour flight. I think it was longer to take an Uber from Logan to the conference center than it was to actually fly there. Wow. Just because I left Wednesday morning, Thursday morning, whatever it was, at like 6 a.m., landed, went to the conference, left and flew back. Like super just in and out because it's super easy to get to. Last year, though, the flight back to Buffalo wasn't until like 11. And it just so happened that a guy was backing up into my car, sort of. I backed up into another car. It was just a weird thing. This year, though, I managed to go visit my friends and then make it home in time and no issues. But
nice.
Great group.
Good.
Packed sessions. I mean, they go start to finish, just back to back to back. So really good conference. Looking forward to next year.
Oh, very good.
All right, man. I got one question for you this week, and then I think we can sort of snowball from there. I had a call earlier this week with a client, and I want to get your thoughts on this topic. Okay. She had said, admittedly so, and she said, Brad, it's almost a little embarrassing to admit this. She said, Brad, we don't know how to sell. She said, for years, we've been order takers. We've been absolute order takers. And myself and our sales team, we don't know how to sell, and we don't know where to get started.
Man, okay.
What do you do with something like that, Steve? Are you seeing that too on the RW side of things?
I think we are. I think we see it just... I see it a lot just anyway, right? Because everything's become, it may be even just beyond the recruiting staffing industry, but let's focus there. Yeah, I think so. I think, people call, you say, okay, great. Hey, we have a need. Perfect. They were desperate 2021, 2022, 2023. Say, I'll send you my fee agreement, and they sign it and you get busy, right? There was no need to be able to differentiate yourself because they just needed somebody. Now, I think the good ones, I don't want to say that, the more specific ones, more niche focused recruiters, we're probably still having to, and the ones that worked in the direct hire, direct placement world needed to really sell to the right partner. So a lot of them wouldn't take just any job order or any assignment because of the need that's there. So they had to sell within that. But yes, I think the general overall, how do you close a deal when someone really doesn't necessarily absolutely 100% have that need or that, what's the word I'm looking for? The dire need that's there, like they have to move now kind of concept, the urgency. That's what I'm looking for. Urgency. Yeah, I think so.
And one thing that she had mentioned is we just don't have a sales system. We have no marketing system. We have no sales system because, again, for years, orders have just been falling from the sky. So our sales rep doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know the system to work. She doesn't know the 16 touch points to go through. And there's no marketing in place to support the sales system. Steve, when you think about the best recruiters, what sort of sales system do they have in place? Because they're running split desks. So how are they then recruiting and selling in the same week?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I think there's some tactics that a lot of those recruiters take, right? Because a lot of them don't necessarily, especially when we first start talking to them, they don't necessarily have that engine you're talking about either. It's, it's something that they've never really embraced. It's always been eat what you kill kind of thing. I'm going to go out, I'm going to hunt. That, I'm going to make cold calls. I'm going to pound the pavement kind of concept. A lot of them will take approaches like NPCs or featured talent, a most placeable candidate, and they go to the market with those. And that allows them to be able to have a purpose to make those calls and to be able to have those conversations that make sense because they're bringing something of value to those prospective clients that they're reaching out to versus saying, hey, do you have any jobs? And so I think that's one aspect of being able to have a process with that. When you talk about ways to generate that revenue and have those conversations. So I think that's one piece of the puzzle. It's not just waiting for those orders to come to you, but they are proactively reaching out to them and they have a purpose when they proactively reach out to them.
Right. And I know, and we've said it on this show before, that it takes anywhere from 17 to 20 touches for a prospect to fundamentally know you exist. Right. So when you're selling, whether it's a t-shirt, it's a cup of coffee, it's staffing services, recruiting services, it takes 17 to 20 touches for somebody to fundamentally know you exist. And what I'm seeing a lot of is those touches don't happen. You can't expect a solo recruiter to make 20 touches with a prospect. There's just no way.
Well, at least not in the moment. I think the good recruiters, or again, ones that have, I keep saying good. It's not what I mean. Please don't accost me. Don't send me a bunch of
best recruiters.
The best recruiters.
I'm on this quest this year to figure out what the best staffing and recruiting firms do differently.
Right. So the best recruiters are always continually marketing within a niche, right? So having a specific dick, because then every call that I've made for the last 7 years becomes one of those touch points. Every interaction that I have on LinkedIn becomes one of those touch points because there's someone that's in my marketplace that allows me to be able to get my name out there, build that familiarity, and then one day close the deal. I think one of our mindset is transactional, that I have to close the deal in that moment, but it is a continual building of that relationship that one day it becomes a truly signed agreement where I'm working on a job order. And I think the best recruiters think about relationships like that.
Fully agree. And I think the hardest challenge with that is when business is down, and we know the industry was down, 15 to 20% last year.
Right.
We need action yesterday. Right. And Steve, you and I, we talk about it quite a bit, the AIDA model, right? So in marketing, you have awareness, interest, desire, and action. It's this pyramid. That's the way that the world should work. I need your attention first. I need to captivate your interest, your desire into the product that I'm trying to sell you. And then ultimately you take action. But the industry, because we're so strapped for any order that we can possibly get right now, we're just sell, action. But what happens as a result of that is our prospects are running away. They're scared. They don't want to work with us, and they're thinking we're crazy.
Yeah. And that's what I'm kind of worried about in some ways for like people we're talking to with this, because I don't want to say it's too late in this market now, because it's not. But if you weren't planning those things 2 years ago, you're not able to harvest them now. And so I think in some ways, yes, you got to be able to survive. You got to find ways to close those deals now. And there's certainly ways to do that. And you may have to be more aggressive. You may have to invest more in your marketing efforts. You may have to have a higher a pay-per-click budget. There may be things that you have to do that are more drastic in the current environment we're in. But if you're thinking now, oh man, I don't want this to happen to me again, what can we do to start planting those seeds now? So that way, if this does happen, I'm not in this position where I'm desperate for job orders or assignments.
Yeah. I've heard it takes 3 times the work for half the results. Are you hearing something similar to that?
Yeah. No, that's great. I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And when it takes 3 times the work for half the results, we need to make sure we're putting in the work now so that, like Steve is saying, in 2026, we're not having to do 4 times the work. It's laying the foundation so that we have a fighting chance going forward. And it's interesting. I think the best staffing and recruiting firms understand that, and they know what it takes to be great and to put in the work now for the future.
Right. Yeah. And I think, so for me too, and you know this about me, because I talk about it all the time, is I'm super process oriented in my sales process, right? I am so structured that it's predictable in the way that I approach my interaction with recruiting firms to utilize our services. And whether or not that works for everyone, that could be argued. But from the perspective of, if you're a firm and you're looking to, and maybe you have 2 or 3, account managers or sales reps or recruiters in your firm, what are they doing within their calls? Is there a consistent process within your organization that allows you to be able to know and predict kind of what's taking place and what's happening? Is there a kind of a set standard? And I think even if we're not necessarily having as many reps as we would like with those conversations for job orders, what are we doing with those reps and those conversations? Are we being the most effective within them? And how are we going about that sales process?
I actually just had a call about that recently. A client was saying that one sales rep is doing very, very well, but she has a lot of new sales reps who are not. And I thought it was common knowledge to sort of have this knowledge share. The sales rep at the top is not telling anybody what they're doing differently. Well, and it was an outrageous concept to hear on a call, because here I'm the marketing guy, right? And I try to come in with a business minded mindset. But in a lot of ways, I'm not going to tell a staffing owner, listen, you're fundamentally, that's wrong, right? I'm here to say, listen, maybe you need direct mail, whatever.
Yeah.
You know? But I was on the call and I was like, wait a minute. So the rep in Buffalo is doing super well and your reps in Rochester are not.
Right.
And at no point are they getting on Zoom or having a cup of coffee and saying, well, what are you doing that's working so well? What do you mean we're not doing that?
That's food off my plate, Brad.
Right. It was outrageous. Outrageous.
But I think it's common within that. And I think we all have our own idea too.
With ourselves. So we're not only competing against other staffing and recruiting firms, we're competing against ourselves internally, because we're not saying, listen, this sales system has worked for me, even though we are now in a market where we want to become more flat than positive. I just had Barry Asen on Take the Stage from Staffing Industry Analyst, and he had said that it is the year of stabilization. Everything that staffing and recruiting firms should be doing in 2025 should be working to stabilize their businesses so that they're not bleeding anymore, right? So if we're not going to see growth and all we want to do is stabilize, well, then maybe we should ask the sales rep who is having success what they're doing from 9 to 5. Yeah. That seems like a good place to start.
No, I get it.
It was outrageous, man. It was outrageous. I say it kind of laughing, but it's scary.
Well, it is. But I mean, sales is even internally can be cutthroat, right? Within that, it just can be. It's just what salespeople are. That's how they're wired. But I like the year of stabilization, because I think that's really good. The idea and the concept of being able to build and create systems, because we've worked so hard on, I know in our organization, we work so hard on systems, right? The amount of time it's taken us to refine our website design process and how many different types of adjustments that were needed within that and the way that we played with it and different variables that affected it through the last 13 years that Recruiters Websites has been doing this is ridiculous. And here's something that we find ourselves doing. And I think that recruiting firms probably find themselves doing this too, is trying to adjust their entire process for the outlier. So what we would do is if a client came in and we would look at that process, and we've had the same process now for, let's say, 3 years, and it's worked great. And then we have one client come in that just destroys it because they were aggressive or they didn't want to follow within what we were doing and the way that we worked that process and the things that we had put in place. And so all of a sudden we're looking up and it's a very difficult relationship, and maybe there's some things we got to overcome in it. It begins to make us question everything we've ever done. And so now for this one person, this established process where we've worked with 200 clients and it worked, now all of a sudden we're saying, okay, now we're chasing our tail and trying to correct it for this one person. And we'll look up and we do that. And all of a sudden the whole thing is wrecked because we thought we needed to change it for one person. And I wonder how many people are even doing that within this current environment that we're in.
I bet a ton, right? Or we're trying to sell into niche verticals that we don't specialize in. We're trying to, all of a sudden now we see an opportunity, and healthcare is the first thing that came to my mind. I don't know that there's a true healthcare demand right now, but we see that there's a demand. So it's like, oh, well, I usually place welders, but I guess I could place a couple nurses. I think I could give that a shot. And we take any order that we can and we drive ourselves crazy trying to fill that order. But it comes back full circle that I think we as a industry need to understand, one, and I've said it on the show multiple times, what got us here won't necessarily get us there. It won't get us to the next 1 million or 5 million. And we need change. We need to embrace change.
Right.
But we also, like you're saying, Steve, need to embrace that there are foundations that got us to this point. And we need to lean into those. Because if you found success in an industry that is commoditized and is hard to stand out in, well, then you're doing something right. So lean into it. Yes, there needs to be change. We need to talk about AI and automation and some of these new things that are popping up that are helping staffing and recruiting firms. And I'm a huge proponent of not being complacent. But if you found a system that works in a market where the chief analyst for the industry is saying this is a year of stabilization, double down on it. Lean into it. Stop trying to fix what isn't broken. And if what you're seeing is successful, fantastic for you. Let's double up on it and lean more into it.
Yeah. What would be really cool for people to do is so within our industry, I can pinpoint several recruiters in my mind that I know have been doing this 30 plus years, 40 years.
Yeah.
they've been through multiple recessions. They've been through multiple, wonderful markets, but recessions and downturns. And they've seen pretty much, every environment's slightly different because just the world's different, but they've seen different environments throughout that 4-year career. Find one of those people. There's got to be someone that maybe has mentored you or you've worked with at some point. Maybe even it's on someone that you're connected to on LinkedIn that you can find. Maybe they're in an adjacent niche, so they're not competitors of yours. Reach out to them. One of the things that in the recruiting industry that I've seen that's kind of blossomed through the years is because you talked about competitiveness within an internal organization. I've actually found that recruiters as a whole have built a better community where they are willing to share and be able to help individuals grow and develop the organization. So like Facebook groups where the recruiters are on, people asking for what ATS you're using or what process are you doing? Give me an example of your fee agreement. And they're literally sending them their fee agreement, like word for word, verbatim. And so in the world that we're in now, I think people want to help. And guys like Ben Minna, he's kind of the epitome of this, right? In a lot of ways, where he's put together this really great show that interviews other recruiters about their best practices and their processes. And they're giving away their secrets for success, what they've done, the insights that they have. And so they're willing to share that on air per se. I bet they'd be willing to share it within a conversation. So what would be really interesting to do is make a list of 3 or 4 recruiters that have had success for a lot of years and find out what did they do and what have they done to be successful for that long of a duration. Because anyone that's been doing this any length of time, there has to be something that they discovered, they turned over that is something that's a secret for them to be able to be successful and make it through whatever kind of economy or environment or situation that the world is in at that moment.
Yeah, and we can certainly give Benjamin Mena a shout out here. He runs the Elite Recruiter podcast. He's been on Take the Stage. I've been on his show as well. I'm actually going to be on the Rock the Year summit that he's running. By the time this comes out, I'll be having done that session already. Ben's a great guy. I think what's interesting, though, is we, for whatever reason, maybe are afraid to ask for that advice as individuals, as an industry. So yeah, I fully support finding your coach. That's been on my mind a lot lately when I think about what the best staffing and recruiting firms do differently is find a coach. And whether that's somebody in person, finding a mentor, finding a show that you like, finding a sales coach that you like and you respect, finding your coach is critical. I've talked on this show multiple times about how I'm training for the Buffalo Marathon. I found a specific nutrition plan. I found a running plan. I found whatever it is that I need, a strength plan. They're my coaches, right? Whether or not those people know it because I'm using apps and YouTube channels and guides that I found online, they don't know who I am. But there are a billion people who can teach you how to run. I have found one person that said, no, you're going to do this for 100 days or whatever it is. It's more than that. It's almost a year, and it will get you ready. Perfect. There are sales coaches that will do the exact same. And we almost have this, analysis paralysis, where we try to find the perfect sales coach so we don't do anything. We try to find the perfect sales system so we don't do anything. Friends, just get started. Ask somebody for help. Have a coffee chat with somebody, but just get started.
Yeah. And try it. Try a different system, because the system that I use and that I developed myself probably isn't the system that's going to work directly for you. Right. But there is something that resonates with individuals to be able to be successful in their own processes. But my advice from that perspective is just make it predictable. When you have that call, you maybe whether it starts with a cold call, whether it starts with someone reaching out to you on LinkedIn, whether it starts with someone emailing you or calling you or referred to you, the process in my mind should still be predictable and the same. No matter how it begins or how it starts, what am I going to do in that call, in those conversations, to be able to get them from someone that's interested to someone that signed my fee agreement? And then guess what? What sucks about recruiting is now you still got to go recruit.
Right.
But
there's more to do.
But
the job is just getting started.
Right. You chose this industry. So right. Okay. So this.
You could be making subs at Subway, person that's listening right now. You chose to do this.
Right. 100%. So that, of course, that is just when the process begins. So you do have to sell that. But then you have a process from a sales perspective for candidates and what you're doing then to get them to interested. Not just someone that's, hey, who's applied to my job, but finding those passive candidates, and when they are interested and express, yeah, sure, I'll explore this. What does that process look like for you from there on to be able to get them to interview, to second interview, to, if you're working with bad companies, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th interview, then to offer and then accept it and starting within the position. So
I could talk sales all day, Steve. I think that was a heck of an episode though, my friend. What do you say? You want to get out of here?
Yeah, let's do it.
That's our show. And thank you for listening to another episode of InSights. If you found this episode valuable, we would love to know. You can message Steve or Brad on LinkedIn and share your thoughts. If you have a question for us, you can tweet us at Haley Marketing or email info@haleymarketing.com. And of course, if you need a hand with your recruitment or digital marketing efforts, we would love to help. Again, email info@haleymarketing.com and be sure you tell them that InSights sent you. For Steve Gipson, I'm Brad Bialy. We'll see you next time.